Yep.
We're going to go to Caitlin Johnstone. International law is only a meaningless concept when it only applies to U.S. enemies. Yes, it is. Okay, it's meaningless when it applies to U.S. enemies. I love her so much. And again, these are some of her musings and notes for the narrative matrix. Talking about David McBride, who just posted, I've been asked to think if I think the invasion of Ukraine is illegal. My answer is, if we don't hold our own leaders to account, we can't hold other leaders to account. If the law is not applied consistently, it is not the law. It's simply an excuse we use to target our enemies. We will pay a heavy price for our hubris of 2003 in the future. Talking about Iraq. We didn't just fail to punish Bush and Blair. We rewarded them. We reelected them. We knighted them. If you want to see Putin in his true light, imagine him landing a jet and then saying mission accomplished. That's pretty interesting take. I think some people weren't like, again, Caitlin's calling it out consistently. Leadership from oligarchy is leadership from oligarchy. And I think that's really the point she's trying to make here. War crimes committed by Australia. Yeah. Okay, so David McBride's a whistleblower. We know about war crimes. And then they charged him as the criminal for reporting on the war crimes of his comrades, which is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Okay, so neither George Bush, Tony Blair are in prison cells, as we know, which they ought to be. And I think we all agree on that. Bush still painting away. Issuing proclamations of Putin to Hitler, right? Pooty Poot. He used to call Pooty Poot.
Right.
Now, they, free as birds, are singing their same old demonic songs from the rooftops. But when you point out this obvious plot hole in discussions about the legality of Putin's invasion, you'll often get, what aboutism? Right? What about...
Yeah.
And Empire loyalists like to make when you just highlighted damning evidence that their government's behaviors were entirely invalidate their position on an issue. This is not a whataboutism, it's a direct accusation. Completely devastating to the argument being made because there really is no counter-argument. Right? So tell me how different it is, what he's doing, from what we did to Iraq. And I think that's really the point that's being made here. That it bypassed. Yeah. So we're one to talk. It is terrible. And we agree. It is not a good thing. But then again, it was terrible that the residents of Donbass were being terrorized for years for being ethnic Russian speakers, and now again, you saw in the last couple days,
Sam's missiles.
Zelensky has now banned the 11 Russian
literal
parties,
dictatorship now,
and he threw out all of the Russian speaking news and channels.
Pulling the Caesar. He's pulling the Caesar move. It's literally the Caesar move of I need control of the country because we're at war.
I mean, it's
that's literal Caesar.
It's pretty unbelievable. Okay, this is why people indicted and detained by the ICC are always from weaker nations, overwhelmingly African. Correct.
Yep.
Right. It's also why Noam Chomsky famously said, if Nuremberg laws had continued to be applied with fairness and consistency, every post-World War II U.S. president would have been hanged. Yeah. It's also why John Bolton once said the U.S. war machine is dealing with the anarchic environment internationally where different rules apply, which does not require actions.
What song did he do that in?
Right? Right?
Which Bolton does the singing?
That's the wrong Bolton. That's Michael Bolton. Well, he sucks too.
Michael Bolton.
That's right.
Get out of here.
Why do you call him Mike?
Who are you?
Why should I change it? He's the one who sucks. I love that line. Right? So Bolton would certainly like to know, in his bloodthirsty push to manufacture consent for the Iraq invasion, he spearheaded the removal of the Director General of the Organization for Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, the OPCW, our friends that so famously have called out what happened in Syria and the fact that was a false flag operation, much to Nomiki Kant's dismay. So again, here's Bolton.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Kunst?
Who?
Sorry.
Yeah. So the U.S. continually works to subvert international law enforcement institutions to advance its own interests. Right? Yemen, when the U.S. was seeking UN authorization for the Gulf War, Yemen dared to vote against it. And now look what's happening to Yemen.
Yep.
There are consequences for crossing Uncle Sam. Go to Uncle Sam, and they'll flood your country with weapons and starve you and cause a famine. And what did we do to
and
the
then
Yemeni
blame it
people?
on you? Yeah, oh my God.
Wait, isn't that exactly kind of what Joe and Kamala are doing to the left right now? Is they're blaming the left for not getting on board with their crappy policies on a regular basis? And
you don't like war? Why don't you like war? Did you see? Oh my God, dude! It was from Fox or somebody. Somebody put it up. It was one of our like Chris. I think I saw put it on Twitter. Chris Legion, another INN member.
Shout out to Chris.
Like that, it was like 100 like representatives or like went against this on the Republican side, and like they were like, what? Like you don't want, like, what do you mean? Like it was like that was the headline, was just like
that there were Republicans
like,
opposing...
almost all the Republicans are opposing like Ukrainian aid.
Well, why though? Because of Let's Go Brandon. That's why. First of all,
right.
But they were support. Like, again, I have to say that Andrew Zygmunt Smith pointed out today that they certainly were all for sending money to Ukraine and weapons to Ukraine when Trump was president.
Right.
But part of that was in exchange for, hey, tell me that Biden and Hunter were doing stuff with Burisma too.
I mean, I'm hoping it's that there's a few of them who don't want to have to use their fallout shelter.
Yeah.
Many
of them, I'm guessing,
because
don't.
They've seen the fallout shelter and they're like, that doesn't look great.
Okay. So, her comments are also outstanding. Subscribe to Caitlin Johnstone. She's CaitlinJohnstone.com. She's got a Substack. She's on Medium. She's entirely user funded and supported, and we love her. Friend of the show. She responds. She's responded to DMs occasionally, and we're ever grateful for that. She's a wonderful human being. Love her to death.
Speaking of wonderful human beings, Robbie Yeager, if you could just like keep an eye on like when they start funding the fallout shelter more, we're gonna need to know that.
Yes, yes, definitely. If congressional money starts getting appropriated in towards billionaire fallout shelters, we definitely need to know about that. Yes,
I'm talking about the ones that are like that. Like, have you ever seen that? Like it used to be in like a hotel, right?
A fallout shelter.
It was literally so it was designed for Congress. And like the chiefs of staff and all the generals, and like
didn't they show it in Terminator in somewhere in the mountains in Colorado?
One of them. I mean, they showed something like, well, that's like at NORAD, but
right.
But like they have a couple of them, but I know there was one that was like set into, it was like a hidden one for like politicians, right? And like they finally showed it, so that means they have a new one.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And like that's like, well, they already got one. They already got another one. Right. But it was like, I would love to know what, like, someone needs to go through and look up like which particular branch of like, like federal funding is that, right? Like would they even put that like this is for the fallout shelter? Probably not, right?
Right.
So it's probably got to be under some like, some organization, right? And if that organization starts getting a ton of funding, you'd be like, oh, like time to fucking, start digging a hole. Like, so